our
Oh, there's already
second,
people here.
obviously, Derek.
Four
People,
people gave us thumbs up, and we haven't even started yet. That's
I'm giving
amazing.
myself double thumbs up.
That's
No one
that's
on
really
Zoom didn't do that.
optimistic. I appreciate your sense of
Yeah,
optimism.
no, they know why they came here. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for the second live stream. We are going to make these a weekly event, and going forward, we also intend to make this a bit more audience interactive. We're still working on.
Yeah, if we can figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I think we'll be able to. I trust us.
Um,
Make it a bit more
yeah,
audience
not just
interactive.
audience interactive, but maybe interviews. We could have some other people on. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
do
yeah. We
some other
we
things. Yeah,
we will be doing these. You'll get 52 of
we're
these a year. I don't care
afterwards.
if it's Christmas or New Year's. You'll be getting those. Okay, so we wanted to talk this week, and this is, I guess, China Week over here on American Prestige. We'll obviously be talking about it on the news updates, but we've got a blockbuster bonus episode this Sunday where we're going to really be talking about the U.S.-China relationship over the last decade or so. But we thought we'd maybe begin with this. Seems to me clear evidence once again that the United States' hegemony in East Asia is literally on borrowed time, with China effectively relegating, to borrow a sports term, because I love those. United States' meeting, I mean Trump's meeting with Xi to really second class status. Um, so, Derek, why don't you just briefly tell people what happened and what you think that this indicates? Because again, it's just another nail in the coffin of U.S. regional hegemony, and I think this has become increasingly clear, even though some of the dullards in the foreign policy establishment haven't accepted this yet. So, what happened,
Yeah, I
Derek?
mean,
Well, D
nothing's happened
squared.
yet. I don't want to like we would have to be predicting. Like Trump is in Beijing. That's the only thing that's happened so far is he arrived in Beijing. But I think looking ahead, like the ground that they're going to cover in these talks is such it's so different from where he came in. As a I would say really hawkish with a really hawkish approach toward China. It's 16 months later, and he's basically going to be asking
For
President
nothing.
Xi
Yeah.
not to hurt us.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I
It's
mean,
basically like the
please don't hurt
Chinese.
us anymore.
The American
Um,
century of humiliation is here. I mean, this is probably like one of the big indicators of the end of the American century, that the United States is really coming hat in hand with all the CEOs, right? It's like
yeah, he's got the
CEO
CEOs
Palooza over
there.
here.
He wants to do some deals. He really wants to make sure that she doesn't cut back on the rare earth trade again as
Yeah.
he did at the height of the trade war. um, because as much effort as I use that term loosely, and these guys are allergic to effort, but for as much as they've put into trying to find alternative sources of critical minerals, like that's a decades long process, really, or at least a decade. And China controls that market right now, so they're really
I mean,
I
it's
think
just such a
they were
shift.
very
Yeah.
quickly humbled. I mean,
Yeah. Like almost
it's almost
immediately.
shocking. Like,
Yeah.
he comes in with the 50% tariff, or we're going to do 100% tariff, and like shuts down all trade across the Pacific. And she just has to say, okay, no more minerals then. And it's like, well, we weren't expecting that.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
that was
it's
it.
it's really the upshot of globalization. I think this marks the end of a number of eras. I would say,
Yes.
I'd say this is a triple threat era ender right here. Doing triple duty. To some degree, the colonialism story started in 1519 reaches an end to it to some
Yeah.
degree, a genuine end here, where the global quote unquote North is not occupying the absolute top position. I think you do see the end of the American century here, with the United States able to, it just is not going to have hegemony in East Asia any longer. It already doesn't have hegemony in East Asia, but that's even more clear. And then I think this is putting a sort of underline on this era of globalization that has defined the post Cold War era, where the China was the United States's place to ship jobs. China became the world's producer, and it to some degree still is, but it now occupies, I would say, the other half of the global capitalist market, which does lead to really interesting questions, which does make it, I think, significantly different from the Cold War. I mean, throughout the Cold War, I mean, really from 47 to the early 60s, the US and the Soviet Union really don't interact very much. Then you get the Test Ban Treaty in 63 after the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Checkpoint Charlie incident. You get detente in the 70s. You get various arms agreements in the 70s and the 80s. You get the opening to China in the 70s. But really not the interaction that the United States and China are almost in like a death dance of this global capitalist market, with each side occupying like an equally important half. So it's interesting. It's like almost if they held hands and sort of walked forward into that capitalist future, I think it would go better. But the United States is still high off this hegemony supply. So
Yeah,
I don't see where it goes. Like China still relies on the United States and the North Atlantic world for consumptive purposes. If that just
right.
went away, that would totally fuck up the Chinese development project. But now they're actually able to assert real power here. So they're like in this like dance macabre, as we used to say in the medieval era, and it's really really interesting.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think, also, I think the end of the era of like think tank people sitting around twiddling their thumbs about, oh gosh, how are we to engage China?
How are we going to
What's
defend
the way?
Taiwan?
How do we? Yeah, I mean, defend Taiwan, but like even the bigger picture, like how can we make China more like us, or how can we influence China to be better on whatever metric we've decided to use? Like, I mean, who gives a shit? Like, they don't need to listen to us. Like, engage, don't engage, it doesn't matter. Um, to the extent that the commercial relationship remains, that's it. Like, there's no all the I mean, I remember all the wrangling about like, should we let China into the WTO? Should we, what do we do? Do we sell products there? Do we try to get McDonald's open in, fucking Shandong or whatever, wherever? It's funny now how like silly all that shit was, because none of it matters. None of it
It's
matters.
it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, if you go back, this is what Fukuyama actually, one of the things he does argue in the end of history, which is just paradigmatic. This is something you saw all the time. I would say between like the Deng reforms and the WTO accession, is that there are literally millions of words written about once China opens up to basically capitalism, which was defined as liberalism. Those
Hmm.
terms were often like once China, the way they would phrase it is once China liberalizes economically, that soon political liberalization would follow. And they obviously pointed to Tiananmen Square and the protests surrounding that. And it's just interesting to see that entire philosophy of history, which I would say drove a lot of 20th century politics. Like a lot of the second half of the 20th century ideological blanket over what I think in retrospect looks a lot like the US rise to hegemony was sort of framed in this liberal economic liberalization arrow, political
Right.
liberalization, and it was just totally wrong. And you see this shearing of any sort of positive project of what the United States is doing for the world, which is what people used to say, going back to that Henry Luce American Century essay in 41 about what the United States was doing in the world. Is no one talks about that whatsoever. There is just no ideological project or
Right.
no positive goal that the United States is trying to achieve here, which I think is a real genuine shift. And it does raise questions about what the fuck is what is the foreign policy establishment for at this point? Like I don't see what they even do here. Like you don't need to understand these other cultures because the United States is just there to try
It's
to
a function of
extract
empire,
successors.
like the idea that we need to have, but even at the height of empire, we didn't really listen to people who understood other cultures. Like, the United States produced people. We had programs to produce people who could speak other languages, and were immersed in other cultures, but we didn't never really listen to them. Like, they were never brought into the government to affect policy. It's sort of a weird, like, it's hard to describe. There's this like sense of, we're the empire, so we need to be familiar. Like, everything that happens everywhere affects us somehow, so we need to be able to deal with it. But at the same time, like, we don't really care. Like, we don't really give a shit what these, other countries or other places. They're all two dimensional as far as the foreign policy establishment is concerned.
But I
I mean,
would
we talked
say,
about that with Alex, like that, that episode about the death of area studies. Like these things
yeah.
were all designed to help broaden the understanding of places that the empire touched. But nobody ever listened to any of these people. Like nobody in any position of authority ever listened to any of these people.
But I would say there was this notion, and I think it was obviously a leap of faith because there was no real empirical evidence for it, especially when you're talking about a giant country like China, that economic liberalization would engender a form of political liberalization, and then you would get some form of democratic peace. Like maybe
Sure.
that was all, I think, honored in the
Right.
breach. And ultimately, I think was what the whatever the velvet glove over the iron fist of U.S. hegemony for
Right.
sure. But I think a lot of people really did believe that. There was
Well,
like
and
this
I mean,
stagist vision. I mean, the
the
development
point of
theorists.
comparison in the '90s when this was all the rage was what Gorbachev did in the Soviet Union,
Right.
where he tried to do political liberalization and economic liberalization at the same time, and the country fell apart. So yeah, I mean, there was this idea of like I remember these debates, like maybe China's doing it the right way, like they're liberalizing economically first, and then they'll open up the politics, and of course that didn't really happen. But yeah, I mean, the alternative is, you try to do it all at once, and you get the most half-assed coup attempt in human history, and the country falls apart, and then you become, what's left is a series of basket cases that the Chicago boys can go in and fuck around with, and
Yeah,
it's
which
just
is what.
horrible. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, what they did with like this incredible disdain. But I mean, this is like, what do you think this means for the US position in the world? Because it does seem like we're entering a new moment, not only internationally, but domestically. I mean, I think that this is probably going to be the last baby boomer president, regardless of who comes next, whether it's Rubio
Oh, come on, that's
or.
that no,
I
don't
would
say
dare to
that.
dream. One could
That's
dream.
You're selling them short. I think we can get at least two more presidents out of that generation.
What do you imagine a 93-year-old Strom Thurmond baby boomer just wheeled out to bang his head on the gavel? But I do think that this is sort of, it is pretty amazing how the American century traced the baby boomer literal lifespan.
Yep.
There are three presidents of the last 20 years were born in June 1946, as it should be. Um, but this is also going to be a shift in domestic politics. So, what do you think the future is? This is something I haven't given much thought to, but I'm starting to think through. As we all know, the think tank access and the academic research, and these are all products of the Cold War. I mean, they're literally Rand is created in 1946, becomes independent in
Right.
48. Council on Foreign Relations is from the early 20s, and Brookings is from I think 1916. It was called I think the Institute of Government Research. I used to know, but anyway, they refigure themselves in the Cold War. What becomes of this like Paris state as US hegemony declines? Because there's a lot of money, a lot of jobs. I think most important, these places function as shadow government. Like Paul
Right.
Wolfowitz goes to the School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins, and he goes into the Bush administration, and he goes in and out, or whatever it is. So, like, what happens to this Paris state? Because you really don't
Yeah.
need it anymore. Like, why would
You
you need all of these groups?
you don't. I mean, other countries have these things, though. I mean,
They're
not to
usually
the
connected
extent
to
that the
political
U.S.
parties,
does.
though, right? Right. Correct me if I'm
Um.
wrong, but aren't they connected to like in Germany? They're connected to like the
Yeah.
SPD as
Probably.
its think
Sure.
tank,
Yeah.
and so that's different. In the presidential system, you
But
have this
the
like
U.S.
fake
doesn't have.
structure,
Yeah. The U.S. doesn't
right?
have that kind of party structure. Um. But no, I don't think they're gonna go away. I mean, some of them might, but when you have a $1.5 trillion military, that money's got to be spent
Right.
somewhere, and some of it's going to be spent on people who think that they're devising, ways for the U.S. to win the wars of the future. Um, and other, I mean, to the extent that these places are all enmeshed in the relationship between the Pentagon and the defense contractors, like they're not going to pull that cog out of the machine. So I think until there's a meaningful reassessment of how much money you actually need to spend on defense, which I don't imagine is going to come anytime in my lifetime, really. Um, that that's going to keep the money flowing to keep these places alive. As far as what purpose they'll serve, I mean, what purpose are they serving now?
They write a lot of
They're there to
reports, Dirk.
churn out
They're,
papers.
they
Yeah, I
they
mean,
write
they're
the
there to
best
take money and churn
articles.
out papers. And then to be a conduit again in the relationship between defense contractors and the U.S. government. I mean, to be there to say, uh, yes, it's good that you're,
Good job,
spending
boys.
$3 trillion to modernize the ICBM fleet, which is completely unnecessary and should be eradicated
uh,
completely. But that's their purpose.
what did Roosevelt say? Say chicken on every table and ICBM in every neighborhood. That's my ultimate dream goal. We got a couple of questions. First, the question is about posting the audio on YouTube. These are going to be YouTube exclusive.
Yeah.
That really is the only way to get people to subscribe. So they'll be available for you to watch all of us, our beautiful faces, whenever you want afterwards. But these will not be uploaded to the pod feed. Someone asked about Pape. Derek, maybe you can answer this because I haven't heard him say this. The Iranian century? Is he being
Oh,
jokey? Is that
did
can't be
Pape say
serious?
that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
apparently
I mean,
Pape's
Pape,
claim that we
you know,
that doesn't make much sense, does it?
Pape has been making the argument that Iran has basically showed itself to be the fourth great power because of its control over
Well, I don't
the Strait of
understand that argument
Hormuz. I think that's
whatsoever.
premature.
Yeah,
I mean,
what's the
I don't
claim
want to,
there?
because they control the choke point of the right now, at least they control the choke point of the
But why
Persian
would that
Gulf.
make it a great power, like as opposed to a regional power? I don't understand.
I mean, look at the effect it's having on the global economy. It's affecting fertilizer yield. Like crop yields are going to be affected this year. You're going to have places where, like, there's going to be
Uh-huh.
an increase in hunger, which is prime trigger for instability politically. Um, the oil market. I mean, fuel costs are spiraling everywhere, which is affects
Especially in the
everything.
coastal elite cities, Derek. It's 6:20. I saw 6:40 today in Seattle. That was ridiculous.
Um,
I
See,
can't do
I mean,
fucking car donuts
you
anymore. It's
you
ridiculous.
need to move into the real America where it's cheaper than that. Get out of the coastal elite
My
uh,
liberal bubble.
bubble, exactly. So I mean, is it really like is Iran really the fourth great power like the Iranian century? No.
That seems ridiculous to
I
me.
mean,
Like, frankly, yeah.
I say this with great
Love.
respect. He was on the show. I think I like Pape. We had a good conversation. Would love to have him back. He's a pretty good hype guy though. Like he's good at like getting people to tune in, like getting eyeballs for his stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a skill. I mean, if we were better at it, we would not be doing half-hour live streams every Wednesday to try and drum up more interest. Like, I
No,
mean, I say that with a certain amount of admiration. That people are good at that kind of thing.
yeah, well, classic
So I
political
mean,
science too.
he
Parsimonious,
phrases
yeah.
things in provocative ways because that's what draws interest, and it's interest, both from the people who find that compelling and agree with it, and from the people who rage about it and get pissed off at it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think I think we're gonna have a guest soon that's going to be making a similar argument about why Iran is a great power, and I truly just don't see it.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
don't.
maybe it'll convince
You're
me.
not a great power if your economy is as. I mean, their economy is a mess. Like lost in all of this is the fact that Iran is a desperately struggling place. Iranian people are struggling. The Iranian economy, the real. Like you can't be a great power if the real's at like 1.5 million to the dollar or whatever it is. The latest black market. I haven't checked in a while. That's not a great power. I'm sorry. And that's the situation they find themselves in. Like they're beating the U.S. They've defeated the U.S. in this war. They've exerted a level of control that I don't think people uh, were ready for them or thought that they were going to be able to exert. And as a regional power, I'm all there, but like great power, I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, and if just defeating the United States in a war, I mean, then Vietnam is a great power, and I don't think very many
Yeah,
people would have
yeah,
argued that at
exactly.
all. I mean, to me, it more suggests the limits of power projection in the 21st century. I mean, that's my big takeaway from this experience, this war, is that the difficulty of power projection over great distances is very difficult unless you're going to. The difficulty is difficult, Derek. Projecting power over great
That's
differences,
profound. That's very
that's
profound.
profound, is difficult, um, given cheap air tech. And also, if you're not willing to do things like break a nuclear taboo or take the political risk of deploying troops, I mean, then power protection is very limited, and there's just no way that other two. I think China's just. I obviously I wrote this article. The way that I view it is that at the top of this pyramid are the U.S. and China. Right below them are Russia, India, and the European Union. I think the European Union, even though it has its problems, is still like a polity that is right there. And then you have like a
I don't
bunch of
know,
middle
man.
powers. You wouldn't put the
I mean,
EU with Russia.
economically, yes. I mean, they're economically they could be more potent than Russia. Not
Oh, I mean,
maybe
certainly
India,
than Russia. Yeah, yeah,
but Russia.
yeah.
But you have to have a will to like act independently. Like,
Right, which they
it's
don't have.
just
But I think they're going to
they do
quickly.
not have.
I think they're gonna. I think they're gonna have to get it. I mean, maybe this is my incorrect supposition, but I just think the United States is going to be drawn down from Europe. Uh, in the next 10 years or less. So I think, and then there's going to be below that sort of like top layer, middle layer, and then like the sort of lower powers like the UK. I put Iran and Israel in there, South Korea, Saudi Arabia. Um, and that was what I think the new structure of international relations. And I wouldn't have put Iran in there before
Right.
this experience, right? Like they have now shown themselves to be a serious regional power in a way that not necessarily would have predicted, which is obviously just blowing up the United States' face. Good job, Trump. But the great power arguments just does not ring true to me. And so, Derek, what's your take on the state of Trumpism today? It doesn't see. I mean, things seemed pretty hairy for a time there with the arresting of a bunch of innocent pro-Palestinian activists and
Yeah,
the
gunning people
ICE
down
in
on the
Minnesota
streets.
and Iran. But it does seem maybe I'm crazy, especially because he did launch this war, which has killed thousands of people.
Right.
Um, it does seem the wind is out of the sails. Did you see what he said today or yesterday, where he doesn't care about America's financial
Yeah,
situation?
I
I
mean,
mean, it
like
just seems like he doesn't
point
care.
blank, like,
Doesn't
are
seem
you
like this is the Fourth Reich over
how
here,
much are
but
you
maybe I'm
thinking
wrong.
about people's financial situation? Not at all.
Never.
Oh,
He goes,
okay.
yeah.
Like, I mean, if Biden had done that in, in the lead up to uh 2024, it would have been like just insane press from the Republicans to but of course we don't get that necessarily from the Democrats. But yeah, I do think it feels like, and this is the product of a declining mind that was never all that sharp to begin with, who surrounded himself by a lot of other, well, I don't want to say declining, but not the sharpest tools in the shed. Like they don't seem to be able to focus on more than one thing at a time. Like it's either you're killing people in the streets of Minneapolis, or you're killing Iranian schoolgirls, but you can't do both. Like you got to focus on one or the other, and that right now it's really focused on Iran. Part of that I think also comes from Trump's, again, like obsession with uh, crafting his presidency as though it were a reality TV show. And so you've got a storyline, and the storyline continues until put end that story and you go on to the next season. You have a news story, and like that seems to be the way he functions. Is from one thing then the next thing. There's not a whole lot of like and I'm sure people will say yeah, and there's obviously a ton of domestic stuff going on that's flying somewhat under the radar, but it doesn't. Part of the reason it's flying under the radar is because Trump himself doesn't really like, every time he talks to the press, it's about how the Iranians are giving him some garbage deal and he's mad at them, or we're really close to a deal with them or whatever. It's like always focused on the sweeps week storyline or whatever.
But it feels like there's like a whiff of loser now, and Trump didn't usually have that. And so someone in the chat asked about canceling elections. I mean, who's going to line up with him? I mean, this is
Right.
not a guy who is long for this political world, to say the least. And as George Patton said, Americans hate a loser, and there's like a whiff of like loserness
Yeah.
around him, which is new in the sort of Trump. I mean, yeah, you felt it again. I mean, you felt it earlier. At least I felt it at the end of the first term, and then the Democrats did the impossible and made him a sympathetic figure by like half-assed going after him via the law, as opposed to just not doing that. And I think he would maybe not be
Well,
president if that were the case.
having their own loser in office. Like, I mean,
Right. Also,
the
correct.
Biden story is a huge, victor to loser run, like speed run.
Yeah,
Um,
especially with Gaza, and just made him seem like feckless, and he was obviously getting more and more senile at the very least the second half of his term. And
right.
so like it does seem like if like the wind was at Trump's sails and he was, really doing anything except destroying the economy and fighting a war that we've already lost, then maybe, even though frankly, even then, I don't really think that was a possibility. But I think certainly now, like any talk of election canceling is to sell books from various expats in
Yeah, I
Canada.
mean, it's hard to imagine. Like, I mean, I'm sure there would be some Republicans who would find a way to bend themselves into saying this is like good for the democracy if we cancel the election or somehow. But I mean, you've started to see, I think, limits on what the administration thinks it can get out of Congress, which was never an element that I associated with Trump. His control of the Republican Party has been so
Right.
total that was never something. But even like a couple of weeks into the war, when they were talking about, well, maybe we'll go to Congress and ask for, I don't even remember, some outrageous war, allotment, some outrageously high number, and like the response from some enough Republicans to potentially have sunk that, and they didn't wind up doing it, which I think is a good piece of evidence that they weren't sure they were going to get the votes. But there was a response like, I don't know, I'm going to need to see some some more support or some more explanation here from the administration before I go ahead with this. But there's that. There's um, I think the debate over like the shutdown, like the partial shutdown, was kind of convoluted. But it just feels like they're starting to recognize that maybe they can't just issue edicts and have the Republican Congress rubber stamp it. Like they have to at least take some consideration of how much they can get out of Congress, which again is I think new for Trump.
Well, these people recognize he's not going to be around much longer, and he's also destroying the American economy and gas prices as a sort of stand-in for that.
Right, but I
He's
mean, think about like 6 8 months ago, they were talking about, well, maybe there's a way we can get him a third term. Wouldn't
right,
that
but
be
they don't
wonderful?
want
Like
that
nobody
anymore.
fucking talking about
Yeah,
that. And even I mean, even if you couldn't get him the third term, it was talking about who's going to succeed him, who's the chosen heir, and like are we going to keep this movement going? And now it's like are we're just hanging on, and maybe it's going to be Marco Rubio, which is asinine because
like
Marco Rubio has
charismatic
bitten bitten his
whole.
tongue all the way off to get by in this administration, and is like a charisma vortex. But even JD is, I think, taking it on the chin, or
Well,
what
JD
for
just
a chin. He doesn't really have a chin, but
I
uh,
just
you
think
know,
JD has no shot. He is not only he's not he's not anti-charismatic, he is inauthentic. And I think it is very difficult in the modern period to be a very high-ranking political official who comes off as inauthentic. I think every president since basically since Reagan has been like defined by their authenticity. And I
yeah. Who do
think
you want to have a beer with? Like, who do you want to sit down and have a beer
yeah, and
with?
except HW, and that was like a very strange, like Republican Party
That was
thing.
weird,
Yeah,
right?
but he was an outlier, only 4 years, only one term, and so I think
Right.
I've always thought
And
JD has no chance.
part of what doomed him was the like mutant, the sense that this guy is a fucking alien, like,
But
when
he's
he
a
went to the
$10 banana,
grocery
right?
store and like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, well, like he went to the grocery store and he didn't understand how the like scanner worked or something.
Right.
Like
That's what it
there were
was.
stories about him, during one of the debates. I think he kept checking his watch as he was debating Clinton and Perot, and like just really off-putting stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's always been that way. The one exception you could argue about, I think, is 2008, because I don't know that either McCain or Obama was somebody that you would necessarily want to have a beer with. But Obama came off as more authentic, and then the economic meltdown happened, and
Definitely more.
McCain, that landed in McCain's lap, which really turned that race into a
Oh,
kind of
Obama's
boring.
charismatic. I don't think McCain had much charisma whatsoever. I think
He
the
had, but
press
he had
liked
that
him.
authentic, even though it was bullshit by that point. He had that authentic, like maverick thing
Well, the
going for
straight
him.
talk express. I
Yeah, the
think
straight talk express.
I think McCain was a product of an era where the mainstream media was still quite powerful. And I think he got mainstream reporters on his side by
Yeah,
making them feel
yeah.
like he was their buddy. But
Because
I don't think he had.
he barbecued for them. He had them
Yeah,
over for
reporters are such cheap
ribs.
dates. But anyway, but I think Obama came off as charismatic, and authentic, and obviously W did, and obviously Trump. Biden, I think, got lucky with COVID, and even then, he was like kind of
But
authentic.
Biden, I mean, Biden's
Yeah.
authentic, sounds authentic enough, like to put him in a race against somebody like Trump and have that be a wash. Depending on what other conditions are present, and as you say, the COVID and the economic problems at that point were overwhelming. And even then, I mean, that was a closer race than people thought it was going to be.
Well, and then we'll be able to look forward to the hantavirus shaping the midterm elections. One can dream, but yeah, it does seem like we're in a, maybe there'll be some Democrat who emerges, but it really does not seem like that is going to be the case. I think we have like a bunch of like upper mid candidates, essentially. So I don't think there's an FDR like figure, but I guess in 1932 FDR wasn't an FDR like figure, but he was like promoting a genuine transformational political program in that
Right.
campaign to the
He's
degree
really
where
nobody.
he introduced a new term into American politics, liberal, which was not
Right.
which was a term mostly associated with Britain, at least in the American imagination at the time. It just doesn't seem like anyone is there, which again leads credence to the argument that like human agency is now more and more limited by structural problems in a way that maybe it wasn't in the early 1930s, which is about a century ago, which is crazy. But it does seem like both parties are in total disarray. That the second Trump goes, this party is going to be a bunch of the vipers in the room are going to be going after them. And it's going to be like
I
I
mean,
think gruesome Gavin Newsom has no shot. I think he just comes off as totally oily, but maybe
oh
I'm
yeah.
wrong.
Well,
So
I mean,
AOC
I
versus
mean, imagine
Buttigieg.
him versus JD, and like your skin would just crawl the entire time watching these two people
He just
debate each
seems
other. Like just
inauthentic, and
like,
he also he also has
um,
like I mean, for a Republican Party base, at least some of whom are racist, his family doesn't look what the base might support. I don't know how he's going to square that circle. Not even that, he like says like anti-immigrant things. It's just like so wild, and that just comes off as inauthentic. I don't think that's going to be bought. Well, AOC is married to a guy who looks like he could be a host of Chapo. So maybe that will help
maybe that,
her.
yeah, maybe
But
that'll get her.
I don't know. Maybe
I mean,
I don't know.
maybe I assume that we're still not that many, but a few cycles away from the AI versus AI presidential race. But maybe we'll
Oh,
get it
that'd
in
be amazing.
2028. Maybe we'll get it early. It'll be like Claude versus Grok or something.
It's like King versus Kodos. Like that's the
Yeah,
election
exactly.
that we're
Like,
coming into being here. But yeah, I think someone in the chat was saying that maybe it's because the Dems don't have a good candidate. I think this is going to be their election to lose. I think that Trump has basically destroyed the economy for most people,
yeah,
and like
it's
if that
hard
is
to
the
figure out how you're going to pull out of this,
it, it is
thinking
going
two
to be
years
over
ahead.
determined, to say the least, unless they have like Matthew McConaughey come out as a Republican. I think it's going to be difficult for the
Yeah,
GOP to win the next election. So it really is the
that
Democrats to lose. I don't
that
know where
could
the
be
party
it.
is.
Like that could be the way to go. And I don't know which party would do it, but like we may be ripe for another Ronald Reagan. Although Reagan was governor of California, but still like a celebrity candidate, like a movie star candidate, like
Me
somebody
and Matt used
could
to joke the
jump
Fourth
into
Reich
that.
is going to be led by Matthew McConaughey. Like he will end the contradictions in that one person. And I mean, if there was someone like that, I think that would be a real worry. But I just think it's going to be basically impossible for the GOP to overcome the economically deterministic fact that they destroy the economy and just like
Yeah,
don't
yeah. I
care.
mean,
And I think that's
yeah,
going to be
like
a real
it's
big
one thing
problem.
to gerrymander your way into like holding on to the house in a
Yeah.
midterm election, but like you can't. What are you going to do with that record when you're running, trying to run a candidate for president?
Yeah, I think there's almost no way to come over that, and so we should get someone on to talk about the DNC because like what is this? Who's running the DNC now? Like, is it still the party of the consultancy that everyone hates and no one believes in meritocracy any longer? I mean, these are big questions that we should
We
be.
should. Why don't we get somebody from Third Way on the show?
Yeah. Let's get someone from third.
To
I
really
think they've
talk
all
about the
blocked me.
future of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, no, they've all blocked me. We should get Ezra and Derek Thompson on the show. We could
Yeah,
talk.
of
We
course.
should talk about abundance. All right. So on that note, should we sing the abundance song before we go?
No, is there an abundance? No, I'm not singing
I'm in
anything
the
about
process
it.
of writing it.
Oh, okay, all
Everyone,
right.
thank you very much for joining us. We'll be doing this every week. We're going to iron this out. We're going to, I think, start to do super chats as well. If you do a super chat, we'll definitely answer your question. But keep it up. We've got a couple good
Tell
episodes this week. What? Tell them
tell
what?
your friends. We got 57 thumbs up, 58 now. I would like to get that up into the triple digits. So tell
Wow,
people to
triple
tune
digits,
in
quadruple.
and
How many does Hassan get? Like
well,
30,000 people watching him at one time.
I mean,
So we're
yeah,
only
we're
one three
needless to
hundredth.
say, we're not there yet. Yeah.
We're not. We will be. Abundance prestige. We should do a series on abundance prestige. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us, and as always, keep on rocking in the free world, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
All right. Bye, guys.